thing is gonna bother me in my sleep every night, isn't it? Great. Hey, Frozen! You seem kinda thirsty, so here's some juice for you. You and I aren't going to pretend that the whole potion thing didn't happen last night, Chaos. I'm not taking any food or drink that you try to serve me. Sure, I'm not the smartest, but I'm also not as dumb as you think I am. Remember, once you tell me how you got that potion, I'll consider drinking it. But as for now, absolutely not. So what, are you just never going to eat then? Since you're so smart, I guess you're not going to try to eat anything in fear of it containing the potion. No, I'm not eating here. I have the ability to go to any dimension I want, with a good amount of them being fairly similar to this one, and that's not even including the different planes. I'll find food. I wonder if this place has breakfast items. Hi Hi Puffy AmiYumi, a cartoon that shows two pop stars and best friends, Ami and Yumi, on their wacky adventures around the world, such as performing in concerts, getting possessed by a dead drummer's drumsticks, dealing with their cheapskate manager Kaz, etc. The pop stars, as well as their band name, might sound familiar. That's because they are based off of the actual pop stars of Puffy AmiYumi, those being Ami Onuki and Yumi Yoshimura. Also, apparently their band name was just Puffy, however they changed it to Puffy AmiYumi in the US because they didn't want any legal trouble with Sean Combs. You can imagine why they didn't want any legal trouble. This band still might sound familiar even if you didn't watch this show, because they also made a theme song for the Teen Titans cartoon. And also that segment with Mad Mod has one of their songs in it, so a lot of Teen Titans association with them. This show was made to attract kids to Puffy's music, and during its run from 2004 to 2006, I'd say it did fairly well at doing so with its charming art style and good music. The plot lines, in my opinion, are hit or miss, but that's besides the point. Even with the fame, the show ended up getting cancelled after 3 seasons due to the creator of the show leaving the channel. The show afterwards wasn't even mentioned by Cartoon Network until 2012 for the channel's 20th anniversary, and a cameo in OKKO Let's Be Heroes in 2018. Again, this show was to attract a young audience, and in the process made toys, costumes, appearing in the Macy's Thanksgiving Parade in 2005 apparently, and of course had video games. Otherwise I wouldn't have even made this video to begin with. However, when attracting a younger audience, you usually want your material to be good. So, today I'll be looking at Hi Hi Puffy AmiYumi Kaznapped to see if this is as good as I'm expecting it to be. Ami and Yumi's manager Kaz tells them that they should be making new songs, but they have been working non-stop, so they're trying to take a break. Suddenly, Harmony, Puffy's #1 fan, appears wanting them to take her on a concert tour. They refuse, so Harmony ends up trapping Ami and Yumi, takes their instruments, and kidnaps Kaz so that she can go on her own concert tour. After being freed by their cats, Ami and Yumi travel the world to save their manager. This story does fit within the realm of possibilities for the show itself. However, my biggest gripe is that there's not really any development throughout the story until the very end of the game. You do end up going to places and encountering things and characters that are seen within the show, such as Kaz robots, Edwin Blair, banana aliens, a squash that's come to life, a weird creature from that one time Ami and Yumi had bad sushi, etc. Oddly enough, the other stuff was not influenced by any form of substance. It feels like an extra long episode of the show where they traveled the whole world, but there's no form of connection between characters, which I feel could have helped with this a bit. One thing that really surprised me though is that of course you rescue Kaz, but that is just the initial ending. Yes, initial. There are 2 different endings for this game. And then I got curious, so I went to get the alternate ending since I couldn't find it online, and got extremely disappointed because the other ending honestly doesn't feel that different. You fight Harmony again, but the overall feel of the ending doesn't feel any different. Ami and Yumi go back to their normal lives in both versions, but one of them involves a concert. Cool. I guess this does suit with my opinion on some plot lines for the show, as some episodes felt like there wasn't a point to them, so in terms of that was done right, in a weird sense. But to me, that's not really something to be proud of. This game captures the show's art style rather well. Everything is bright and colorful, and almost every level in the game seems to have some kind of color scheme to them, which is pretty cool. The opening cutscene is also nice to watch as it's treated more like an actual cutscene. I honestly expected to see just a slideshow of images and some text explaining the situation, mainly because that's just about the only thing I've seen whenever I review a GBA game, but it's actually decently detailed, so I give props, even if it's mainly just for that scene and every other scene uses the prior method that I mentioned. However, there is no excuse for every fanboy and paparazzi person to be the exact same person everywhere you go. You go around the world and even the moon, and you're telling me every single one of the fans look like this one kid that's in the intro to the show, which honestly most people wouldn't even notice, but I managed to catch that because I was watching the show at the same time that I was recording footage for this. There's really no reason for all of them to look the exact same. This game also uses a lot of Rockstar terms in place of regular mode names, like World Tour being the main game, Backstage being for extras, and Encore mode being for level select, which adds more to the whole rock/popstar theme. Speaking of pop stars, Ami and Yumi are portrayed greatly in this game, as you'll see a good amount of famous actions and poses that Ami and Yumi do. The actual Ami and Yumi also appear in this game from time to time, such as in the intro to the start screen and while the game is saving, and it's nice to see that the main point of the show existing carries over to this game. A nice touch is that the intro screen to every level has a title card that is similar to the first season of the show, since afterwards they went about the title cards in a different way. Now, given that this entire thing is based off of a pop group, it's kind of expected for the music to be good, because otherwise there wouldn't be much of a point. And I'm happy to say that the music is good. It's not as good as Puffy's actual music in my opinion. Honestly, it's hard to beat bangers like K2G, Red Swing, and Invisible Tomorrow, but it's still nice to listen to and works well in the context of the show. At the beginning of every level, you choose whether to start out as Ami or Yumi. You are able to switch between them throughout the level, and you will need to, as both of them have different abilities and traits that are utilized to maneuver around, defeat enemies, and solve puzzles to reach the end of the level before the time limit runs out. Ami is able to perform triple jumps in the air, allowing her to clear giant gaps and jump over large walls. Her weapon of choice is a microphone. This can help with getting over gaps as she can spit it around to float in the air, as well as swing on hooks that are scattered around. Though she is able to hit enemies with the microphone and shove them herself, she is not able to defeat them. That power is reserved to Yumi, who uses a guitar. Not only that, but her strength lets her push and pull blocks towards pressure plates and use her guitar to break down barriers in her way. Yumi only has a single jump, however she runs and crawls faster than Ami and can use her guitar to boost forward in the air. Ami and Yumi do have universal moves. In order to deal with fanboys and paparazzi, they can play a power chord to amaze them and leave them speechless for a few seconds. Hitting them on the other hand reduces your score, which is gained by defeating enemies and collecting music notes or instruments placed throughout the levels. In the top right there is a meter that is built by running, attacking enemies, and performing character specific actions. When it is filled, you can use a jam session, which instantly defeats any enemy and permanently stuns fanboys and paparazzi that are on screen. Around the levels you run across Puffy's cats and you're able to pet them. By petting Jang King, you get an extra life, while petting Tekirai gives you health. I'm really hoping I'm pronouncing both of those names right. For every world, your ending score is based on whatever you had at the end, plus 3 categories that are multiplied by 10. The time remaining, the amount of notes you get, and the amount of enemies you beat. In between worlds, you take control of the tour bus and shoot at flying enemies, up until the boss at the end where you have to defeat it. You also have bombs that defeat every enemy on screen and or do large amounts of damage to bosses. You're able to get more bombs and health if need be by defeating enemies and potentially getting a drop for them. Both Ami and Yumi control pretty well. There are a few exceptions, like sometimes Ami just won't try to latch onto hooks, which can sometimes lead to instant deaths, but other than that, they are pretty good to control. Speaking of, you do end up using both of them often enough in every level, making their special powers and attributes stand out and mean something for whenever a situation occurs where they are needed. Ami mostly takes the role of platforming, given that she's able to reach a lot of areas that Yumi can't on her own with her triple jump, and her hovering ability does help out a lot. While Yumi is mostly the brute and heavy lifter, and being able to take out enemies is always a good thing. There is also a lot of extra stuff that you can do and get in this game. There's an entire extra world and boss, a time trial mode, and extras like costumes for the characters, which are based on some actual events of the show. Then there's photos and a sound booth, including sound effects, which is interesting. You don't often get to hear the sound effects individually from the game. Plus, there's the fact that there is an alternate ending to begin with. However, the amount of work you have to put in to get the extra stuff is not worth it at all. Reason number 1, the level design. At first, the levels feel a lot more explorative, fairly short, and pretty diverse. But as the game progresses, it begins to feel very repetitive with a lot of going back and forth across an entire level to open the exit. The only time where that's not the case is when a level is an entire gimmick, which is extremely rare. By the end of the game, puzzles are usually just pulling a block about 2 steps, then going around what feels like half a level, to then push that same block 2 more steps, which will then open a gate on the other side of the level that you will have to go over to and complete. Rinse and repeat until you can exit the level. Then there's something that was incredibly unnecessary to do with this game. Can someone tell me why breakable barriers at the beginning of the game take 1 hit to break, but by the end of the game, it takes 6 to 7 hits to break a single one, and there are often multiple barriers in a row? It just feels like crummy padding to do this. Also, having enemies that can't be beaten at all without a jam session is kinda dumb and can also just waste time, especially when invisibility frames are barely a thing in this game. Enemy placement is also garbage at points. Like having an enemy that can only be beaten by a jam session in a tiny crawl space is dealt with a jam session at best, or just waiting forever at worst. Or having situations where you basically have to eat damage, or it's almost impossible to avoid damage without what feels like frame perfect movement. Then add that on top of the multi-hit blocks and it's just frustrating to get through, especially when trying to get extra stuff. Which leads into reason number 2, which is what you have to do to get some of the extra stuff. In order to get the costumes, you have to do the time trials. Okay, fine. But in order to even attempt to do the time trials, you have to do the levels in Encore mode. In order to do that, you have to beat the World Tour first. Basically, you have to beat the game pretty much 3 times before you can get all of the cosmetic changes. Are you telling me there couldn't have been any other way to do this? Like, just having time trials available off the bat after the World Tour instead of having to do the levels a second time? On top of that, you basically have to be perfect to beat the time limit for levels. The most that the game will allow is 1 mistake, and even that is pushing it. And then there's hard mode, which you have to play for the World Tour to get the true ending. It barely feels any different until World 7. Standard enemies just have double health and a few bosses have slightly different attacks. And honestly, you more than likely won't notice half the time. And again, the ending doesn't really feel that different, so that's another thing going for this game. It feels like they're trying to make the most out of the game with the same exact mode, but that doesn't do too well for me, as I have pointed out in previous videos. Honestly, the best I can give for this game when it comes to this segment is a bunch of nitpicks, so here we go. Yumi's jump attack should have a bigger hitbox. It honestly feels like I can't use it for attacks. Plus, it doesn't have nearly as much use as it should for this game. Fanboys and paparazzi should be stunned longer from power chords. This is especially the case when multiple ones are next to each other and it's easy to hit the one you already hit. Jam sessions should leave fanboys and paparazzi stunned permanently even if you go off screen. And enemies that can only be beaten by jam sessions shouldn't be able to reappear by leaving the screen and going back when regular enemies don't return. The tour bus segments are okay. There are some patterns that are really stupid to deal with, and I feel like I'm just mashing a button most of the time when I'm doing these, especially during bosses that are basically bullet sponges. At first, I was actually having a decent amount of fun and was constantly surprised and impressed, but the more and more I went on, the more and more I became frustrated at the constantly similar level design and how much effort you had to put in to unlock things in the game, especially when it came to the alternate ending, which was the most disappointing thing about this game given how little of a difference it felt with having to put in twice as much effort to get it. The experience was honestly similar to a roller coaster with a slow rise and then a sudden drop downward. Unfortunately though, the roller coaster never ends up going back up, and very rarely does it even get to a point of evening out. At some point, constantly going downwards gonna get boring. Now there is another game in the series, and I can only hope that that one is better and learns from this if it is at all similar. But right now, ugh. Well, they don't really have breakfast items, but their smoothies are really good. Wait, why is it bland now? Is this just a thing with their smoothies? Okay, and now it's fine. Whatever, maybe that's the point. This world is filled with aliens if I'm correct. Who knows, maybe taste is altered because of that. That, or I'm trying to find some really dumb justification for its inconsistency. Whatever, I'm not some food critic. Now, where else to go so I can avoid chaos? And also get some actual food. What's going on, my fellow residents? It's me, TheFrozenCavern, and thank you guys for making it to the end of this video. Now, when I was younger, I got into Puffy AmiYumi because of Teen Titans, but at the time, I didn't really know who they were until I looked up who made the song, and of course, Puffy AmiYumi popped up. I didn't really watch Hi Hi Puffy AmiYumi until recently for this review. So I do want to ask you guys how you got into Puffy AmiYumi if you have. I'm sure there's a very small percentage of people who haven't that are clicking on this video for some reason. But I do want to hear your guys' story about how you got into Puffy AmiYumi if you did, and if you're that big of a fan of them or not. But in case you have not already, make sure you guys go down to the description because that's where all of my social medias are located. My Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Discord are all in the description, and they are all ways for you to get notified of whenever I'm making another video or have an update for the channel. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe as well as share it with your friends and family. But until the next video, take care.